Go. Okay, welcome to our Bucky weekend call of December 3rd and 4th, depending on which continent you're on. Continuing our discussion of Grunch of the Giants, and we're now to the section in the book, the Grunch of the Giants, where we're going to actually talk about Grunch, and we're going to get real serious now from now on out. So good. So Joe, welcome to the call tonight. How are you feeling, and what do you expect to get out of tonight's call?
I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling good. I'm really excited. I'm in the car, obviously, at the moment, but I will be home shortly, and I'm really looking forward to going a little deeper into Grunch of the Giants. I was on a call, I guess it was been 2 weeks ago, last Sunday, and a lot of people had spoken about how they felt that this was actually one of the most profound books, or if not the most profound book that Bucky has written. So I mean, it has, made me a little bit more eager about really getting into what he has to say. So Susan, how do you feel? What would you like to take with today?
I'm feeling good. It's been a cold and rainy day in Arizona, and we need every bit of rain. I do like having the moment of the week where we get back to Bucky and have a chance. This was his last book. So love getting in on his last thoughts, his perceptions. And I think that, even having gone through it a couple, 15 years ago, it certainly has shaped my understanding of what I've seen unfold in our society over the years, and looking again for application. I do love that in the end, Bucky is clear that it could be utopia, it could be oblivion, and there's just absolutely nothing to be had by focusing on oblivion. Steve, how are you feeling, and what would you like to get out of today?
Well, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm actually in Henderson, Nevada, so I'm in the Pacific time zone. My brother and I have been in rock and roll band since 1959, and one of his sons became an excellent bass player, and he's about to relocate to Houston, Texas, and has sold a place, and they're getting out of there. And so we thought we would get together and jam one more time. So my brother is an expert drummer, one of the best. And I jammed. I play guitar, and his son, my nephew, played bass, and we kicked butt today. So I'm still in Las Vegas, and my plan is to head out back home tomorrow and go back to Salt Lake, and then I'll be back in Mountain Time Zone. I'm excited about this Grunch of the Giants books, and as you said, Susan, he wrote Design Discipline, which is kind of interesting. Discipline is about control. Design Discipline, Oblivion or Utopia, the idea was, hey, are we going to make it through? And then 20 years later, he writes this book. And I think he's seeing what's getting in the way of this utopia we're trying to do. And he calls it the Grunch of the Giants. So we're going to get into that tonight. And I see us actually going in two directions simultaneously. I think oblivion and utopia will occur simultaneously at the same emphasis. It's like the pendulum will split and go, and out of that will come something wonderful. And I'm convinced that those of us, my being on this call with you guys, kind of will keep I'll be on the lookout and won't get caught up in the mythos of oblivion, which seems to be apparent everywhere. And I can name you 5 conspiracy theories that will justify oblivion. So I'm looking for utopia, and utopia is individual accountability. And I love how Bucky focuses on the individual. So we're going to go from here, and we're going to allow Joe to re-situate from his car to the phone anytime we go, and so we're going to go ahead and start with Grunch of the Giants. Here we go. Sharing the screen.
I'm dropping off for a second. I'll be back on in a minute.
Okay, really good. So I'm gonna start reading, or let's see, Susan, do you want to start reading?
Sure.
Are you ready for that? Did I surprise you?
Nope, that's all good. My phone just made a noise. So there is no dictionary word for an army of invisible giants, 1,000 miles tall, with their arms interlinked, girding the planet Earth. Since there exists just such an invisible, abstract, legal contrivance army of giants, we have invented the word grunch as the group designation, a Grunch of Giants. Grunch, which stands for annual.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead. We've got Manu coming in to join us, but you can continue.
Okay. Grunch, which stands for annual gross universe cash heist, pays annual dividends of over 1 trillion US dollars.
So he's convinced there's a gross universe cash heist going on that's costing the utopia over $1 trillion a year.
Well, that would be very conservative. You saw what they extracted during COVID.
Yeah, it was like $3 trillion, I think, wasn't it?
Oh, way more than that, I believe.
Yeah, I guess they're not giving us an exact accounting. Really, really good. Hi, Manu. How are you feeling today, and what are your expectations? We're just getting started. We've only just read the first paragraph here, and so it's totally appropriate for you to chime in. How are you feeling, and what do you expect from tonight's call?
Feeling very lucky, very happy that I didn't miss a lot. Expecting that we really continue on the tone that I heard when I joined the meeting just a minute ago. And yeah, that's it.
All right.
And good morning to everybody, Susan and Steve.
And then Joe's just transitioning between his car and his computer. He'll be back in momentarily.
Excellent.
So I'll read this one here. Grunch is engaged in the only by instruments reached and operated, entirely invisible, chemical, metallurgical, electronic, and cybernetic realms of reality. Grunch's giants average 34 years of age. So I think he's talking about these CEOs of all these companies, most having grown out of what Eisenhower called the post-World War II military-industrial complex. They are not the same as the pre-World War II international copper or tin cartels. The Grunch of Giants consists of the corporately interlocked owners of a vast invisible empire, which includes airwaves and satellites, plus a vast visible empire, which includes the only 18-year-old and younger skyscraper cluster cities around the world, as well as the factories and research laboratories remotely ringing the old cities and all the oriental industrial development, such as Taiwan, South Korea, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Singapore. It controls the financial credit system of the non-communist world, together with all the financial meaning of initiating any world magnet mass production and distribution ventures. By making pre-graduation employment contracts with almost all promising university science students, it monopolizes all the special theoretical know-how to exploit its vast inventory of already acquired invisible know-how and technology. Wow, that's a big paragraph. So what do we note from this paragraph? What do we see him talking about here?
Well, I see many things. The first is that historically, pre-1945, there's no reinforced steel. There's no steel reinforced concrete. Do you know that?
He mentions copper and tin cartels before World War II. Yeah.
So pre-World War II, steel reinforced concrete is not common.
Yeah.
After World War II, it spread over at a very rapid speed. That is one thing historically that you see there. The second thing is the first line and first sentence that you read in here is the extreme leverage of the economy. Remember the numerical revolution, right? So remember that the transistor is discovered in 1947. And with a transistor, what it marks is acceleration of information. Is acceleration of communication, telecommunication, going around the world, all of it in just one swap was possible. The third is that he's talking about is this, he is talking about, we are about 19, in the end of 70s. That's why he's talking about the 26 years of age. Because, in the 70s, people, the baby boomers, are in the first one are adulthood, and they are capturing, they have replaced the high parent, the previous parent that he's talking about. So there you have that tendency of human to capture the benefit of progress of evolution for themselves and to control it. And that's why he's talking about all of those things. So he's showing that in the contracts that, yes, this is what has been achieved, but that has been captured by a group of people. I don't know if I read it accurately. And other stuff that he talks about is the break, like the precession at work. People that are 26 they are less knowledgeable of the devastation of the depression, the Great Depression. So they know, they are not very sensitive to that. So they are able to really break away, keeping the principle that they want to accaparate all things for themselves, but probably ignoring the consequences of what happened before them. So they are just in one phase. They forgot, the other phase that happened. And fast forward, it looks today that other phase, we are the one living it with all of these hiccups, everything that we are experiencing today in the past since 2000 and since after 2000 is quite strange. I mean, we are the baby boomers, actual fact, experiencing that. The front of the baby boomers didn't experience it. That's an aside. I don't know if it makes any sense, it worth any 2 cents, but that's what I think.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or comments? Go ahead.
With this whole idea of we've got a whole new generation coming up that does not protest the idea of cash going away.
Yeah.
And so once everything is digital, once everything is in the cloud, very little that the individual can hold of their own sovereignty. And we're talking about it right now in terms of, does my vote get counted?
Yeah.
Does my vote count? And if the machines and the Grunches who own the machines are the ones doing the counting, it's kind of a moot point. Yeah.
But let me structure that idea again a little bit. It looks to me that the great cycle, the long cycle of history is preconditioned by the current generation being completely oblivious to things that happened in the past with dire consequences or with important consequences to the evolution of humans. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yes, I think us at our ages, so Joe being the tender young one on this call, actually we look back and are trying to grab some of the almost relevant history. And I had my daughter come up, and again, she's a sweet kid, but she said, yeah, one of the big problems is that all the wealth in the world is being held by old people, baby boomers. And when they die, the wealth will be redistributed. And I thought, I'm just like, boy, if you bought that. I said, so you want your generation that, makes money by being Instagram influencers, packaging farts in a jar and selling pictures of their feet on the internet. So you guys are ready to take over the planet, right? Couldn't be that it's not old people who have all the control. It's actually, and for everybody outside of Bucky, I just say the military industrial complex.
Right.
Just point back to Ike Eisenhower and leave it at that.
And who was Eisenhower?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
He
I
was
studied-
one. Yeah.
Dwight Eisenhower was president of the United States. He was, of course, the general in World War II. He was the guy in charge of invasion of Europe. Eisenhower was the general in charge of all of the forces of Britain and France and what was there left of France and America as they went into Europe. So he was responsible for victory in Europe. Ike was my favorite guy. He was the Republican candidate for president, and the slogan was, "We like Ike."
Yes.
There's an answer on Ike.
So that's beautiful, you see. So he's the guy who's known. Ike, when he talk about the military industrial complex,
Right.
he's talking about that at the end of the 50s.
Yeah, when he left office,
Yes.
he found that he was so he had no authority to do anything. He cited the Dulles brothers being crooks, who guided the State Department, misdirected him, and then warned everybody about the military industrial complex that was running everything. And it's the Grunch. It's the gross universe cash heist. By saying Grunch of the Giants, I think we lose something here. We need to call it a cash heist.
So
my
point, Steve, is that who is aware of it? Who got aware of it? How does Eisenhower straddle? How comes it that he's the one that is, let's call it the conduit of our consciousness of that military industrial complex? So he's the one that's at one point in his life, having known history, to check that there is something on the go here, stood up and warn of this. Isn't it Jeremiah? A lone voice in the desert.
Yeah, a voice from the dust. Yeah.
And my point here is that in order to remember and to be able to reposition yourself, you need to know history.
Yeah.
You don't know history. Unfortunately, there are cycles of history which half cycle is longer than our conscious lifespan, collective.
And the history that was taught to me in school was of very little help. It really wasn't until I got through enough of my training and Audible books. Like, God help me, I wouldn't have been able to sit and read all this stuff, but being able to listen to books while I do other things
Right.
It's just been following that thread of curiosity and yeah, things I would not have considered as being possible 20 years ago. I now feel pretty clear that it was the CIA that had Kennedy assassinated. Check. And a whole bunch of stuff around that. I would not have considered that a possibility
Yeah.
20 years ago.
But you know, maybe, I mean, I'm not privy to that. I might agree, I might not agree to what you say, but there's a consequence that everybody can read. And you draw consequences of life only by knowing long history. That's why it's very important. That's why Bucky says the inventory of all the things. The first thing that he did when he renounced suicide was to say, I'm going to diarize everything, every thought that I have. So he spent his life recording all of his experiments, his feelings, the things that he did in detail, isn't it?
Yeah.
You remember that? If you take, for example, which book? If you take Critical Path, towards the end of Critical Path, you hold that list of all the metals, all the discoveries, how they were used. That came out of his observations of things and noting down. And what happens when you note down things, when you observe, when you are in that state of equanimity, what will happen? You're going to start seeing patterns, aren't you? So he saw that patterns. Now, we have a choice of saying, oh, this is BS, or actually he's seeing something. Coincidentally, 30 years later, this Bucky all saying exactly the same thing that Eisenhower said, now documenting and writing it into this is an essay that he writes it in and say, hey, this guy is still there. He didn't disappear in 30 years. He is still there.
Yeah.
So it is something that we have to have in mind that is called consciousness.
Right.
Having in mind something that happened and believing that it could happen again.
Yeah. The interesting facts here, Eisenhower was president of the United States from 1953 to 1961. I would like to do, it'd be really cool to do a documentary on the two books, Design Discipline, Oblivion, Utopia or Oblivion, and then this book, and then open up with a panorama of the skyline of New York, San Francisco, LA in 1965 era, which is just after Eisenhower, when Design Discipline was written, and then do a skyline of New York, San Francisco, LA, and maybe Dallas or Houston might be good because they were, they just popped up as well. And say, okay, here's the US in the case of Design Discipline, and now here's the US in the case of the Grunch. And he's talking about 18-year-old buildings. It'd be so cool to see that skyline and how different they were in that 20-year period and how all those skyscrapers that got built. And I've never thought of the that the elite controlling our economy with this invisibly controlling everything as in terms of the skyline. And he cites them right here, 18-year-old buildings. The other thing that really impresses me here is he says that this Grunch, this universal cash heist, has even taken, before graduation, the whole school system is built promising university science students promise them money by getting them sucked out of the hope for humanity and getting sucked into the grunge. So all these college students who could be helping things and could be working for humanity are working for the grunge. What a vision he paints right there in those two paragraphs. I would love to see that. You know, part of me is going to go out and do some research and get pictures of those things and then talk about these 18-year-old and younger skyscraper clusters, cities around the world. And it'd just really be interesting to see how all that works. Well, he's certainly warning us, and he seems to be a little bit frustrated. And wait till we read on. Julian, how you feeling tonight? We're so glad you made it.
Hello, everyone. Feeling good. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Right on.
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. I was juggling around with some other stuff here at home, but yeah, finally got to join with you guys for at least
Glad to have you.
today. So yeah, I'm great.
All righty, good. Susan, do you want to read Who Runs?
Certainly. Who runs Grunch? Nobody knows. It controls all the world's banks, even the muted Swiss banks. It does what its lawyers tell it to. It maintains technical legality and is prepared to prove it. Its law firm is named Machiavelli, Adams and Oil. Something the second mock is a cover for Mafia.
Wow. He seems a little bit. He seems a little bit tainted there. Seems a little bit. Wow. What are we going to say? Anything else? Okay, let's continue.
Grunch didn't invent universe. It didn't invent anything. It monopolizes know where and know how, but it's devoid of know why. It is preoccupied with absolute selfishness and its guaranteed gratifications. It is as blind as its Swiss banks are mute. Much, much more about Grunch later on.
Comments, questions?
Well, when you read that, he has that rant. And then when you start the blimp, is completely different. Now it sounds completely different. It looks like somebody who is seeing things so clearly what is happening and is fed up that around other people are not seeing. What is grunge? Grunge is simply egoism, selfishness. That's what I understand he's saying.
Yeah.
Our natural tendency for gravitational grab
Yeah.
of what is happening. We didn't make it, we didn't cause it to happen, but we see that we can leverage on it for power, for personal things. And
right.
and this is what we've been seeing all over.
Right on.
Yeah, that is my comment on that one. I don't know if Joe or Julian have other things to say about it.
Any other comments from you guys?
I am grasping at this. This is really like sounds really conspirative. Something that I was thinking before the call even is that sometimes we can get biased towards what we already see, what we already read here about. So I was hoping to like, okay, let's take a look at how can we get to really know if this is something we think through. Like, how can I tell you this? Sometimes when we try to, for example, find a system of 4 components. You remember, like, hey, we didn't know that this was also be grouped in groups of 4. So sometimes I feel like, okay, maybe we're biased. We want to see things in groups of 4. Maybe we like to see that. So let's see if that is really true, that those 4 things go in groups. So I'm thinking to take the kind of the same approach here. Like, how can we take this on the test? You know, like, so that's my approach right now. Like, I'm still looking for what Bucky says about much more about grunge later on. Like, let's go see it, because I'm still grasping it.
Right on.
But
For
let's
me-
let's take. Joe, you wanted to talk.
Yeah, I was
Very
gonna
quick.
I mean, just a general comment at the moment, more than anything right now. The one thing I keep thinking is how Bucky was able to see things in multiple dimensions. And he's able to see things that a lot of his inventions were the ability to see things that other people didn't. And that wasn't just relegated to technology or inventions of that, like the Dymaxium car, the Dymaxium house. It was also included things like politics, and he could actually see what else is going on in the world around him. And this is dark. I mean, what we're seeing here is probably as dark as we could. Yeah. I mean, when you start talking about the military industrial complex and Eisenhower, that was a turning point. This is, he's talked about the great pirates in Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth. That's very similar. That's not totally dissimilar, so
Sorry, again, the
he's
great pirates for what?
and another one of his books, Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth. And he talks about how it's essentially very similar to what he's saying with Grunch. And that there are individuals that are rigging the system to not come up with the best solutions to our problems. And that's what we're seeing here. And I think of, again, I even think of Eisenhower, and Steve mentioned Dulles being, obviously, I've heard stories where Dulles had duped Eisenhower in many cases. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Where he, like basically with situations like Iran, and Eisenhower was scared of, supposedly petrified of another nuclear bomb going off, so that he would approve anything that the CIA would do, in order to prevent that from happening. Whether that is all true or not, I have no idea, but I do know enough about the world in general now to read what Bucky's writing here and to take it very seriously, and it brings an awareness for us to think about the solutions that we are told to our problems that are presented to us. Every solution that is presented to us that we should really question. And that is, that's the beauty of Bucky, is he gives you a formula to look in multiple dimensions. So this is the part of the Grunch of the Giants that is really important. And I'm, again, making general comments. These could almost be takeaway, but this is this is dark stuff.
Yeah, just as a matter of point of history, John Foster Dulles served as Secretary of State from 1953 until his death in 1959. And Allen Dulles, his brother, headed the CIA from 1953 to 1961, when Eisenhower left the office. And he was convinced that these two guys conspired I heard testimony that Eisenhower felt he'd been duped by these two guys, just as you said, Joe, afraid of another bomb dropping, believed all the stories and supported the CIA in doing their shenanigans.
Yeah.
And that's why
I
when
think-
he got done, he warned everybody about the military-industrial complex because
That's what I always thought. I said to myself, as soon as I started to read a little bit more, that's what he's talking about.
right,
He's not just talking about the military itself, even though we are addicted to the military.
yeah,
But when he's talking about the industrial complex, it's a much broader kind of, he's painting a much broader brush.
right.
I really believe he's talking more about, the CIA as well.
Sure.
But I do think that there's this addiction to defense as well. That's just regular, that's just, but it is
Yeah.
utopia or oblivion.
That's right. And he brings
What
it up
about-
here that this military-industrial complex made contracts with all these graduates from college to get these jobs in the system. So it's like they're not thinking clearly about it either, right? They just
Right.
want a job. Manu, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, just think about type 1.
Mhm.
Type 1 evolution. Is it not what is at play here?
So
There is leverage, that is general principle, that is, that uncover things to the mind of people who are researching and enlightened, right? But there is that other group that's just doing their things. And they are fueled by just power.
Yeah.
They just want power. That's what fuels their quest.
Most
And
people
then-
I talk to just want a job.
Yeah. And the people that just want a job is also some kind of, is the masses that they're not conscious basically of what is going on. And they're just living day by day, or they're just surviving. So these guys are in their own game of power mongering that has nothing to do with type 2 evolution. It's nothing to do. So they are doing their stuff, but they have the ability of being a pirate, or being the first to see something that is happening that can help their quest. And they grab it.
Though, I remember when I saw Lex Friedman interviewing the president of Pfizer Corporation. Lex Friedman later apologized in his interview because he wasn't tough enough on the guy. But the guy really believed that Pfizer was really doing a major service in the world.
Oh, these guys do.
They think, well, yeah, we make a few mistakes, but we're really helping things out. And I don't know what his salary is, but I'm guessing it's in the millions of dollars a year. And he's really convinced he's doing good things. And Lex, after the thing, apologized and said, I should have asked him some harder questions.
Yeah, but Steve, what is the political language today? What is the political currency of language? Or the economic currency? Isn't it jobs?
Sure. It's
Every
jobs and
government
quarterly-
in the world talk by job. And it's
Yeah.
measure how well it does by the number of jobs.
and gross national product, quarterly
Right.
GDP.
So, but now think about it. Is job in the interest of the individual,
Right.
long run?
Yeah. Good question, huh?
Is it
Yeah.
not the palliative that is given to you to live from the day to day? It is said you are given enough to survive the day, right? And to be so occupied that you don't think of the longer term consequence of that. That's another way of saying you are prisoner of a phase.
You betcha. Well, let me just work at my job for another 30 years and get my mortgage paid off, and then I'll talk to you.
Even then, it's not,
I-
I think
being
that there are
told to
so
feed
many
it.
unwitting individuals in this process.
Yeah. Well, just by
Bucky said-
getting a mortgage, people getting a mortgage just lock themselves into slavery for the next 30 years.
Well, that's true.
As soon as I have a mortgage, I'm doomed. I can remember I was active on the National Real Estate National Association of Realtors. They were doing a regional convention, and I remember going into Arizona. I was in Arizona, and the mortgage guys had just made a big pitch to the Native American tribes. It was trying to get them to deed land to the individual tribe members so that then they could get mortgages. And they were going to lift the Native Americans out of poverty by giving them mortgages. And my jaw dropped open. I looked at that guy and said, "Are you kidding me?" You know, it was just, it's amazing how it worked. When I get caught up in the grunch and I have this job and my job is to give mortgages, I want to give mortgages to everybody. And I don't think about the long-term consequences. It's really difficult to stop and say, hey, I'm not going to do that. And then we're dealing with, like Susan brings up with her kids on Twitter, and what is their connection with reality? And here's what's funny is, what reality is really real?
See, what if you work for a bank and you are the, let's say, mortgage officer or the lending
Yeah.
officer?
Yeah.
Or the
And
real
then you
estate
start
agent.
thinking like that, what happened to you? You'll be fired
Listen,
in no time.
I consulted real estate mortgage brokers, and there was a guy in Arizona who was a mortgage broker, and he was telling people, don't take advantage of these 5-year low payment, low interest loans. They're going to have balloons. You want to get a 30-year fixed mortgage. And he was selling 30-year fixed mortgages. This is back in 2004, 2005, 6, before the big crash in 2008. His boss came to him and said, stop selling 30-year mortgages. If you sell them, I'll fire you. We want them to get the low interest rate 5-year loans because they'll come back and refinance in 5 years. And if you give them a 30-year mortgage, we'll never see him again. He was threatened. His job was threatened. So what does he do? Does he quit his job? Or does he give 5-year mortgages to keep his job to feed his family? This is the invisible grunch this is the invisible grunch.
No, Steve, what is mortgage?
Dead deed. Mortgage is French for dead deed.
Okay, but let's take in the context of geometry or the principle of life.
Okay.
Is mortgage not a manifestation of leverage?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if mortgage is a manifestation of leverage, and the bank has put, the bank's interest is to have you mortgage to death, pay interest. Isn't it to you, isn't it your final examination to check that, hey, this mortgage cannot be a permanence in my life. It is a mean that I can use for something else. I'm just saying again that if you are somebody that is educated financially, you will know how to use the system.
Totally agree. Mortgages are great for investors,
Yes,
but they're terrible for consumers.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And that goes
That's the
back to,
key. That's why Bucky talks about individual in final examination. Because the corporate is blind. They don't care. You see, they invented nothing. They know nothing. They only know what they want. What is at the play is power grab. And they want to do everything. They want to monopolize everything for that continuous flow of credit, of humans, of a system towards them. That's all they're interested in.
But I don't think so. I think the mortgage guys are just interested in having a successful mortgage company. There is this ignorance. There's this cloud, this veil of ignorance, where by just keeping my job, I support the grunge. Just because I keep my job.
Mm-hmm.
And can I keep my job and do good? Yeah, I can, but I'm so busy. I don't know. I don't want to get into that. Okay. Any other comments or questions? because just this week, and I sent this out earlier to our Wednesday group, but just this week, Jordan Peterson described, he said, you know, for these young woke people who are coming up right now, the Twitter generation, it really is hard to tell the difference between wealth and theft. Because most of the guys who are wealthy are narcissistic, unscrupulous, you know, and it's easy to see why people don't know the difference. Okay, as we read here, does everybody know what a blimp is? Julian, do you know what a blimp is? I didn't think you would. Now, I was raised in LA. I know what a blimp is. We used to see the Goodyear blimp flying through the sky.
Another word for it is dirigible.
Oh, really?
What is it called? Dirigible?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So there's a little basket, Julian, and it's got like a gas-filled balloon.
Full of hot
It
air.
looks oblong.
Yeah.
And the place that you see them every year that's where they would hang one over the Super Bowl to take the aerial views of the play of the Super Bowl.
I remember having toys with that, but here in Colombia, that's never seen. It's never. I don't believe it ever been one blimp here in Colombia. So only
I
in
don't
pictures.
That's right. I think you're absolutely right. The Goodyear blimp. The Goodyear blimp used to be parked in North Long Beach, California, and I lived in Inglewood. I mean, it was just 20 minutes away. My grandfather worked at the Naval Shipyard in Long Beach, and here I'm going to show you a picture of the Goodyear blimp.
So in one of my old books that I was reading about the skyscraper race in New York, one of them tried to get an advantage by putting up this last spire, and the justification for the last spire on the building was that's where the blimp would tie up.
Yeah.
The dirigible.
Steve, is that your cake?
What?
No.
I'm teasing you. Is that your cake?
Yeah. It's just, I don't know why I'm having trouble getting out of these, out of this loop I'm in.
There's a cross on top there. White cross where you have the arrow. You have to click on it.
Well, I see this little D over here. Oh, I have this thing over here. There we go. I have my pictures of you guys all in the wrong place.
Okay.
Yeah, you can get this poster for $65 if you want it.
Oh, and you could also look at the Hindenburg too.
Yeah, and the band Led Zeppelin is based after a blimp.
They call it the dirigible. That's another name for it.
In Spanish, I am more related to dirigible. Dirigible.
Uh-huh. And that means this to you, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're going to read now about the blimp. I just thought I would bring that up because I was afraid a lot of people wouldn't know what a blimp was. So here
That
we
was
go.
really good explanation. Thank you, guys.
Right. Okay, good. Okay. When blimp photographs are taken of giant stadia, the plural of stadium, packed full of rock concert or football fans, we get an idea of what 100,000 people look like. We all think of Hiroshima. We do, all of us do this. We all think of Hiroshima as the worst single killing of humans by humans. This was about 75,000 capacity Coliseum full. Each day of each year, year after year, a 75,000 capacity stadium full of all around the world humans perish from starvation or its side effects, despite an annual average 5% world food production overage of the amount of food adequate for the world's total population. So even though we're producing 105% of the food needed to feed everybody, 75,000 people die every year because of hunger. This daily kill of innocents dwarfs the awful Auschwitz killing.
You guys, the medical profession kills 100,000 plus a year in this country alone. And that's sometimes patients taking their prescribed medications correctly at the prescribed dose.
Wow.
There's a 747 going down every day. And none of us questions the legitimacy of the medical establishment, which is part of freaking Grunch. And let me tell you what they've done by shooting up all these people with their lovely Pfizer and Moderna. I'm just seeing a whole bunch of people with autoimmune cancers that are so aggressive. It's already started. People with heart disease that came out of no place.
My brother
Wow.
took his second shot and within 3 days had a heart attack. He had no previous condition of a heart attack at all. He just got a heart attack, and his heart kept beating. They defibrillated him 14 times because he wouldn't die. And because his wife was a PA working in the hospital where all of the doctors were her work associates. They did not want to be responsible for him dying. So they stuck with the guy. 14 defibrillations and he came out of it. 6 weeks later, he had no sign of a heart attack. I mean, and he's convinced that it was the vaccine. And the guy, Robert, well, I don't want, now we're getting political, so I'm going to stay out. But
I'm just saying, it's like, we can talk about Grunch killing large swaths of people on a yearly basis. And I think starvation is absolutely ridiculous and unnecessary, but we do lots of unnecessary killing.
absolutely right.
Let me ask you a question, Susan. Do you believe that the guy, for example, in the case of a pandemic, right? The guy who comes out and say he has a vaccine. Do you believe that that person set out to do the vaccine and was aware of those consequences?
The guy who developed the mRNA technology, he said, this is experimental, do not use it as a vaccine. It goes to the heart and to the genitals. We don't have any idea why it settles there, so be careful of this stuff. That's the guy who developed the mRNA
That's
technology.
comforting.
Isn't that comforting? And they went ahead and used it as a basis of a vaccine anyway. But that was the excuse for coming with a vaccine 2 years earlier than they would have come up with it if they'd done a normal
And they,
process.
yeah, so there's so much here, and the word vaccine, we talk about language being a leading indicator. It's not a fucking vaccine.
It's not a vaccine.
Right.
It doesn't prevent infection. It doesn't prevent transmission. There's an argument as to whether or not it minimizes severity when you catch it. It doesn't fit the definition of a vaccine.
Right.
Let them get away with that word in our culture, and it changes everything.
Yeah,
And
that's a good point.
And I came up with a regular education that lauded the people that came up with vaccines to begin with. And now what I see, looking back and reading more history that's coming at it from multiple different viewpoints, quite possibly there's been problems with many vaccines for a really long time that we have not been informed of, because it wasn't in the interest of the military industrial complex to let us know that. So, and those are more general statements. I in my own personal look at the situation, that virus came out of a lab that was doing gain of function research. There were papers published from multiple different nations over a course of years. I just, whether or not it was a malicious intent to release the virus at that time, don't know. But the effects are pretty much the same.
We live in such a wonderful world, don't we?
And yet I have partners, I have people of good consciousness who I literally love and respect, that would walk away from me and possibly never talk to me again, even just for that statement. I think that's softened so that many more people can consider it. And now I'm probably not going to be censored by saying, hey, this looks like it was man-made in the lab. But everything else that follows from that, not available for conversation.
Yeah, there's a new book. Jordan Peterson just interviewed this guy who was a researcher, and so far it's not conclusive that it didn't come from a lab, but all the indications are it looks like it. And the problem is China is not releasing their data, and there's just not enough data to come to a scientific conclusion. But the pointers are that it probably did come out of a lab, but you can't say for sure.
But that is the most, I wouldn't say scary anymore. That is the extreme, or let's just put it, event, happenings that has obviated the future that we could imagine.
Right.
Whatever it is, statistically, what I take, whether you took the vaccine or not, is that vaccine has been either voluntarily or forced into people for half of the population, right? Maybe that's the number. So I'm looking at it and I say, people are going to marry. Probability, say that I didn't take the vaccine or my child didn't take the vaccine. When they find a partner, he's not going to find a partner that ask him, do you take a vaccine or not? So it's going to have an effect on the product of generation in the times to come.
Yeah.
So it's just something that we really have to take stock of now, and it's part of a learning of lessons.
Yeah. I love this opening sentence in the next paragraph. Joe, are you in any situation that you want to be able to read?
Yeah,
You
sure.
want to do that? All right, good.
Yeah.
So,
Start with the Grunch did not.
right.
Okay. Grunch did not bring this about, but it could very profitably bring it to an end. Just because what's that?
I said, isn't that interesting?
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Just because it is possible does not mean that it is easy. With the computer's guidance, however, and some executive vision, courage, initiative, and follow through, it can be done very profitably in terms of money and lasting kudos for Grunch and pro-humanity enterprise. It would cost only 3% of Grunch annual dividends earnings to not only feed all those who are starving to death, but to alleviate the dire poverty around the entire planet, since the population explosion is occurring strictly amongst the impoverished people. Such a world initiative on the part of Grunch, would eliminate one of the two great threats to humanity's continuance on the planet Earth: nuclear bombing and overpopulation.
Okay, I don't think overpopulation is going to be the damn problem.
Either do I.
Most people agree.
Population collapse is going to be a real issue.
I believe that.
Not so much.
It is in Germany already.
That is Elon Musk's actually prediction.
Right.
Although he seems to have taken on the repopulation problem too himself.
But what he's saying here, I can make a comment on it. It is to say, we are transceivers. We have the ability where we are to be the catalyst of something, to be the salt, as in the Bible says, to be the salt of the earth. Do you understand what the salt means? In a small quantity, it can completely change the taste of a meal. The taste was bland. And because that meal has to be eaten by us, and that we are made to be the one appreciating the meal. If you put a pinch of salt and you mix it in that, it's small in quantity to the big meal, large meal, but it changes the taste and the appreciation of it. And that's what he's saying there. He said the Grunch didn't invent what happened. But the Grunch has the ability
To stop it.
to stop it.
Yeah.
I think that when Steve highlighted the word there, we overlook the word stop it. Because that can mean that, oh, they're just egoistic. They could stop it, but they didn't. They created it, they could stop it. But the reality is that I didn't choose where I am. But when they talk to me individually, in my local, I have the power to deflect or obviate my becoming. All the conditions that I'm found in by birth will not explain 100% what I become individually. Like Susan is talking now, she talked about the stand she took. Some of our colleagues didn't even talk about them, talk to her, they walk away. And she said, with time, something has happened. She didn't change her stance, right? But it happened that she didn't die by the fact that she didn't change her stance. And the others can see. That's when the loop information has start arriving and enlightening more people. Or it could also enlighten Susan in being less ideological or something about it. So it just event, and the reality is our individual examination. What stand do we take? And that stand hasn't got to have immediate benefit to us. It is something that is necessary to be a catalyst for a change. And what Bucky said further is that that can be teleological in that you can know the general. That is, you can know what you will become in advance of acting. And that's the whole holy grail of conscientious progress, isn't it? It is, we say we are awakening consciousness. When you awaken consciousness, it means that you are aware of the general. You are aware of the larger trend. And if you know that through your mind, and you assume and you take the consequence that it will be according to those as your assumption, there you have a power to tweak something now and expect. I say expect. When you say expect, it implies probabilities that it can, it might not, but it's likely. And expect something that is desired. So the problem is not about the environment. The problem is about our continuity in the environment, isn't it? Because whatever what we do, the biosphere will still exist in one form or other beyond our extinction if we choose to engage in path of destruction of our species and other kind of cousin species that we co-live with. Am I making any sense, or am I talking BS?
You're making sense.
That makes sense, and it reminds me of something that I connect with the previous idea that you were discussing. Can you actually put the text back, Steve, please? Because when you were talking, Manu, about how can we get to pursue that those things that we aspire. For me, it is related to how can we get like the population to be aware of this big picture, but there's a balance between what are the things that we innovate and the consequences we evaluate for those innovations. So there are so many things that we have developed as a humanity, and those can be used in a good or a bad way. The thing is that it's a tool, it's a resource, it's something that we still take advantage of it, and still it might be causing some harm, but we weren't aware. So I have, for example, icopor. How do you call icopor in English? Like these white things with bubbles, white bubbles that is really light to put food in and all of that. Foam, exactly, like foam. So foam is something that we still don't know how to use after it's throw away. We don't know how to use it, but it's still being used a lot. And there has been a lot of those kind of things in the past. Like we don't know what to do with that, but still we know there's an advantage of it, so we're still using it. And if someone who has that idea in his mind and stops inventing that just because maybe there's a possibility that we don't find a way to use it correctly, then the innovation doesn't happen. So sometimes I think that like reading all of these texts, for me it's like thinking that there are so many things that we don't see, like the same thing about 720 and 360 and 720. Like there's things that we don't see. So there's also like the hunger and the bad side of the politics of the industrial, of the military. Those are all of things that I don't know, we are not, if we see our world without that, I think we're not seeing at a world. We're seeing at something that it doesn't exist, because it has to be the both things. Now, how can we get to make the humans thrive, or the humans make progress, even with that bad side, or that other side that we don't see? I think that's something that from my side, I think it's more like doable, instead of thinking that every other bad thing is going to be eliminated from the world, and that will be a perfect world. Like I don't think that's happening. And also about the overpopulation, I've read somewhere, I don't know where, I have searched a lot about where did I hear it or where did I read it, but I haven't found the source. But it was something that said that the problem with humanity will be that around 10 billion people, the world is going to stop growing, because we will start facing fertility problems. So we're going to not need to deal with more than 10 billion people, but how to keep the humans reproducing. So yeah, I wanted to throw that. I see Susan nodding, so maybe you also have heard about that. I would love to see the sources of that also. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's my comment about that.
Cool. Let's see. Susan, do you want to read The Great Communism or down here? Yeah, or down here.
The Great Communism versus Capitalism, Politico-Economic World Standoff assumes a fundamental inadequacy of life support to exist on our planet. So too do the four major religions assume that it must be you or us, never enough for both. Jointly, the two political camps have spent $6.5 trillion in the last 33 years to buy the capability to kill all humanity in 1 hour.
Okay. I want to keep going.
Jointly, we Earthians have also had adequate physical resources to take care of all humanity, but lack the metaphysical know-how resources with which to employ effectively the Earth's physical wealth. Adequate know-how could only accrue through trial and error experience, combined with synergistically acquired wisdom, altogether employed with absolute faith in the intellectual integrity, omni-loving, governing, regenerative universe. However, in 1970, our cornucopia of ever more swiftly accruing know-how overflowed and its content integrated synergetically, so that we may now care for each Earthian individual at a substantial billionaire's level of affluence, while living exclusively on less than 1% of our planet's daily energy income from our cosmically designed nuclear reactor, the sun, optimally located 92 million safe miles away from us and safely interlinked with us by photosynthesis, rain, wave, and all other weather behaviors.
Cool. Any comments or questions?
I think to me, the most important thing that is said here is the second sentence
Yeah.
of the second paragraph. Adequate
Adequate
know-how
know-how,
only
yeah.
accrue through trial and error experience combined with synergetically acquired wisdom, altogether employed with absolute faith in the intellectual integrity of lovingly governing regenerative universe. If you ask me, what is my choice of all of that pack, that would be, I don't know for you guys, but.
Any other comments or questions? Mano, do you want to read this last paragraph here on this page?
Just
Yeah.
a small comment. I like a lot about trial and error experience,
Yeah.
like iterative process, like
Type 2 evolution.
The one thing is, you know, I think as a struggle is synergetically acquired wisdom. I think that's a lot more challenging than people think, or than even maybe Bucky thinks. I think it's a understanding the whole and how things operate is it's a challenge. So
And that being said, Joe, it's amazing to me that Bucky didn't bring up the electromagnetic field around the Earth as being one of the major protectors of the Earth from the sun. Even though it's 92 million miles away, it's safe only because of our electromagnetic field. Mars doesn't have that, right? And so it's a wasteland. Okay, cool. Manu, do you want to read that paragraph?
I want to make a comment about what Joe said. Sorry, the thing about let me read again, the synergetically acquired wisdom is that it's really profound if we hear like we want to be more aware of what we are doing and be more aware of our relationship with others in order to find like that flow, like that thing that we cannot explain with words, but we know that we're moving in the right direction. Like thinking in masses like for example, the stadium example that we were reading before, how can a mass of people that big being more conscious about all of these synergetically acquired wisdom? That just makes me think of a lot bigger things, like, yeah, like what Joe said is really profound to me because of that, because I still we don't have that. So it's like it's a lot of potential there. Just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty.
Okay. In technology's invisible world, inventors continually increase the quantity and quality of performed work per each volume of pound of material, erg of energy, and unit of worker and overhead time invested in each given increment of attained functional performance. This complex process we call progressive ephemeralization. In 1970, the sum total of increases in the overall technological know-how and their comprehensive.
Sorry. Hang on, that'll go away in a second. Come on, go down there.
Now you'll know the climate.
I can't, there we go. I just clicked off of it a while ago. Go ahead.
This complex process we call progressive ephemeralization. In 1970, the sum total of increases in overall technical know-how of their comprehensive integration took humanity across the epochal but invisible threshold into a state of technically realizable and economically feasible universal success for all humanity. Wow.
I want to comment on that because I believe Bucky was describing his perspective during like the end of manufacture era, like many work, a lot of work by humans was manufacturing and turning replacing humans by machines, right? I think that is something that is still happening, just that it's not with manufacture, but with other kinds of jobs. And I think that a lot of people, for example, thinking to replace a lawyer, thinking to replace a doctor, thinking to replace a nurse or something like that. I think there's a lot of uncertainty there. And I really like the way he's calling this complex process we call progressive ephemeralization. So maybe that's also what artificial intelligence or what machine learning or deep learning is going to make, like even creative work like marketing is going to be replaced by artificial intelligence somehow. Yeah, wanted to comment on that because I'm thinking that progressive ephemeralization is a good thing to remember to how to call this.
Does anybody have any comment on that? Okay. Are you good? Go ahead, Joe.
No, I'm complete. I think actually, Julian nailed it. I mean, I think Bucky's insights with ephemeralization are profound, and the only thing I do still think is a problem is, and he notes it obviously a little bit earlier, is the distribution factor. I do think we'll be able to produce plenty. But it's, I think there's gonna be still a problem with distribution. That's the only problem I see in the future.
I don't get.
Unless we decentralize.
What's that? You don't get that?
Yeah,
Well-
I don't get what you're saying about distribution.
For food and things like that.
Energy.
Hmm.
I heard a thing the other day about how the Netherlands, a major part of the countryside is greenhouses. And how the Netherlands, one of the smallest countries in Europe, produces almost as much produce as America. And they do it in the size of a state of Delaware or something. It's because they've used ephemeralization. They've learned how to do more with less and how to make, therefore, their farming industry more productive and more regenerative. And I think that's one of the solutions.
Yeah, it is regenerative.
Yeah, and I also, there's this whole thing about localizing everything. If more Americans had chickens, it would reduce the need to distribute, because then they could have their own protein right on their things. And then there's this conversation about crickets, and it takes a gallon of water to feed a great, I don't know what the numbers are, but thousands of grams of protein with a small amount of water, where it takes thousands of gallons of water to produce a pound of animal protein. And so there are just ways to get more efficient, and there are ways to localize and eliminate distribution. So I think it's a combination of both. Because I like my avocados in the springtime.
Also a fan of avocado.
So, and I raised avocados in California, and they only come in fall. In California, we only get avocados in the fall. But if I get them from Mexico and I can get them from South America, I can get them year round. And I like my avocados year round.
Here is the opposite. Like, there's part of the world that you don't have avocado. Oh God. Like, yeah, here's more usual to see avocado all year round.
Okay, Mano, do you want to read the next paragraph?
Yes. This actual but invisible threshold crossing began in 1969 when human scientific knowledge and technological ingenuity, backed exclusively by adequate citizens' tax raised government financing, learned how to do so much with so little as to be able to place humans on the moon and return them safely to Earth. Other typical 1970 to 1980 manifests of our option to do so much with so little as to be able to take care of all humanity were: 1, the single flight delivery and installation of a 140-foot diameter, 23,000 square foot floor space, stainless steel and aluminum geodesic dome at the mathematically exact south pole of our planet, together with its capability of carrying the snow load of complete burial.
I sure don't know what he's talking about there, but evidently they built a Bucky dome.
That was a station
Pole.
in the South Pole.
Yeah.
Okay, in Antarctica. The
Oh, I
second,
see, carrying the snow loads
yes,
of it being completely buried in the snow. And yet
yes,
the building structure survived. Thank you, I got it.
yes.
Moving on.
Second, the rocket launch satellites able to relay earthbound, earth-around TV and other programs that we all know. The solar system's planetary inspection by TV communication, Earth Dispatch Explorer satellite. 4, the computer revolution and its progressive miniaturization. 5, the laser beam and its many capabilities, such as its color TV reading of polished disc records. 6, Macready's successful human muscle powered over the English Channel flight his subsequent Paris to England exclusively by direct sun-powered flight, and finally, that Macready's 95-foot wingspan plane weigh only 45 pounds due to its carbon fiber alloy, structuring, and mylar skinning.
I wasn't, okay, I don't really know about that.
So it means that Hubin was actually could equip itself to becoming a bird, flying over, you know.
Yeah. Well, we got Macready, but we didn't get his aircraft.
Okay.
That was a boyfriend.
He did, yeah. There
Yeah,
we go.
there you are.
Hmm.
With only the muscle, you just use your muscle and you leverage that strength to fly over the channel between France and England.
English Channel, yeah.
Mm.
Okay,
All right.
there's a picture of it.
I think I walk underneath that every time I go through Dulles Airport.
Ah. Is that called an aileron and it's out in front instead of behind the fuselage? Looks like that's what gives him his lift. Very interesting. Joe, do you want to read next?
Sure, absolutely. In 1970, it could be for the first time. It could, for the first time, be engineeringly demonstrated that applying the most advanced know-how to the conservation and use of the world's resources, we can, within 10 years of from Killingree to Livinggree, reoriented world production, have all humanity enjoying sustainably higher standard of living, and that higher standard of living than any humans have ever heretofore experienced. I'm sorry. It could be further demonstrated that we can do this while simultaneously phasing out all further Earthians' use of fossil fuels and atomic energy. Humanity is so specialized in these epically significant technological facts are so invincible that it seems an almost hopeless matter to adequately inform humanity that from now on, for the first time in history, it does not have to be you or me. There is now enough for both, and to convince humanity of this fact in time to permit it to, I'm sorry, exercise its option and save itself.
Okay, let's pause there. Any comments or questions? Julian, do you want to read? Do you feel comfortable reading English over here? Go for it, dude.
Yeah, you read my mind. I feel good reading. From There Is Now Plenty of World, right?
Yep.
All right. So there is now plenty for all. War is obsolete. It is imperative that we get the word to all humanity rush before someone ignorantly pushes the button that provokes pushing of all the buttons.
You can pause right there just for a second. I'm hearing a lot of people right now looking at this Russian situation with Ukraine saying, hey, we now have proof that war is obsolete. Have you guys been hearing that? Anybody else heard that war is obsolete? That it just hasn't been effective? I've actually heard it on media. And that, you know, Bucky said it in 1985. Okay, any other comments or questions? Go ahead and continue, Julian.
What rush? Why he put rush in all caps?
Russian all caps it's like, it means hurry up. It means it's very important. It's like yelling. When you put something in all caps, it's like yelling.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, I thought, yeah, okay. So yeah, it's not anything
Oh, yeah,
different.
it's not an acronym. It isn't,
No,
it wasn't
no.
referring to some acronym. Yeah.
Is
Okay.
wake up to the situation before it's too late.
Yeah.
For the humanity, important here, humanity saving itself. It doesn't say humanity saving the environment, as it's been, we have to save the environment. No, we have to save ourselves.
Yeah.
Our capability to destroy ourselves.
Mm.
It's
True.
not, I mean, the environment is what it is. It is there. But can we sustain in that environment?
Mhm.
Yeah. You want to continue reading, Julian?
I can continue. So what makes so difficult the task of informing humanity of its newborn option to realize success for all is the fact that all major religions and politics thrive only on the for all ages held, ignorantly adopted premise of the existence of an eternal inadequacy of life support inherently in the design of our planet Earth. You want to
Right.
stop
And
there?
it's terrible because it's not just reading English, Julian, it's reading Bucky's English, which is
Right.
it's hard for us to read. You know, so keep going if you like.
Yeah. This is fun. Okay,
Mm.
that it is possible for us all to win, and how is what Grunch of Giants is about. Number 2, Astro Age, David's Sling. I think this is
That's
a
the
new
second
chapter.
chapter. Yeah.
Oh, is that this is the second chapter? Okay, really cool.
So I don't know what the time is, but it might be,
It's 11:40.
yeah, it's probably time.
Okay, good. So that is a chapter heading then. With that being the chapter heading, I'll mark that for next time, for next week. And in the meantime, we'll close it down and see how we're going. Julian, thanks for reading tonight. How are you feeling and what's your taking away? What's your takeaway?
Thank you, Steve. Well, I'm feeling thoughtful. I am feeling that there's like we started from a really dark description of the world, and he ended up saying this is something that we can win. That is about the Grunch of Giants. So again, like turning around the sphere, you know, like from the dark side to the light side of that. So it feels good that it's not so crazy to think that if we have been able to manage the world up to now, after so many things have happened, what is the probability we still have chances that we get through all of these, you know, like I constantly keep seeing like the warnings or the concern. I think what we read from Bucky's and in the last weeks and today reflects his concern about the nuclear bomb, you know, and that is a lot of more close to him, as it was just happening, and the world was in war like a few years from that point in time. And right now there's many more years after the Cold War, and we are still seeing a war that is as I take away what Steve was saying, that war is getting obsolete. So I'm thinking that yeah, it makes sense. Like any other country thinking of war now, it's going to think it like 3 or 4 times a lot more before jumping into something like that again. But even though with all of this, I think that there's still a lot of stuff that we don't know is going to happen. Like for example, when Bucky was explaining about how was possible to land a man on the moon, how was possible to fly all of these kilometers with only a man-powered machine. So I think there's still a lot of stuff that we don't know yet that is going to be possible. So I think the better we get into our thing, like the sooner we get into that synergetic, I forgot the three terms, the one that Joe highlighted also, the synergetic.
Harmonization.
Sorry.
Senator, I'm sorry. I thought you meant
Synergy. No, harmonization.
No,
It
okay.
was like all of us getting into the same synergetic movement. I don't remember. So I think the sooner we get into that, the better for all of us. And I don't know, like we have to learn also how to deal with all of these uncertainties on how to communicate better all of these unknown things for many people that is not aware. So I think that's my takeaway, my biggest takeaway from this. So Joe, how do you feel? What do you take away?
I've had quite a long day, to be quite honest. And I just was, just going through some communication with people that just are really going through a tough time. So I'm feeling a little bit distracted, is what I was trying to say. It does start out dark, and I think that but I am enjoying this book. It's interesting that I didn't comment on it at the time. The four major religions assume that it must be you or us, never enough for both. And I think that that's a big problem, is that where, it is always us or them. We never really think in terms of win and win-win. And I think that that's what Bucky's kind of going to be outlining for us. I mean, it did start out very dark about essentially how we're exploited and how Grunch essentially is exploiting the whole entire system. But I think that there are scenarios that we can actually think of in the future where we can come up with solutions that are win-win. It's my mind's a little bit all over the place. It's a little bit scattered today. But I think also, I'll just enjoy reading the rest of this, and I'll just leave it at that for now. Susan, how are you doing? What did you take away from the day?
I'm feeling well, and I think that Bucky is pointing to this optimism. Grunch has to convince the majority of the populace to believe fearful statements that there isn't enough for everybody. They need to have the populace divided into us and them, because otherwise they don't get to maintain their control over the systems that has them harvesting the cash, the energy, and the intellect and the innovation. I think this is so hopeful, and it really brings to us the responsibility for communicating the possibility of everybody making it. And it's like, yeah, if you just get out to that bigger perspective, just always starting with universe, We either all make it or we all don't on this spaceship planet Earth. And so if we don't take care of each other, if we allow people to divide it, if we allow ourselves to be divided by fear, we will push the wrong buttons. There is more than enough resources. There's more than enough know-how. There is more than enough compassion on this planet right now to take care of all the humanity that's here. Manu, how are you feeling? What are you taking away?
To start with, Joe, I'm sure you feel our love and support of you in these difficult times that you are facing.
Thank you.
All right. So that is really deeply felt. So
Thank you.
yeah, sure of that. I'm also very grateful and privileged to be this morning with you guys, with my tribe, and having a very, very interesting exchange. My very, very important takeaway is actually quoting Bucky, and I think Julian insisted on that. That is, I will read. Adequate know-how could only accrue through trial and error experience, combined with synergetically acquired wisdom, all together employed with absolute faith in the intellectual integrity, omni-lovingly. And when I read this, I'm thinking of Steve that says, love is the gravity of universe, governing regenerative universe.
That's new for me. That's a new one for me. That's a good one. I like that.
Right. And to me, it's so powerful knowing that consciousness of all of us being passengers aboard this spaceship Earth, we are Earthians, that's what he said. And he says again, and I quote Bucky, it is possible for all of us to win. And how to win is what the Grunch Giant is about. The how to win. There's a possibility we've seen is there. We can see it. How do we win? And it's so important. And that's what put, again, education at the forefront of everything. We seem to overlook the fact that we are in pursuit of veritas, and we've always been in pursuit of veritas. That's the essence of life, being in pursuit of veritas, tweaking where you are, leveraging to tweak somewhere else, to position your angle better to see farther in pursuit of veritas. What Susan talked about today about the vaccine, it is the pursuit of veritas. And locally, there are forces that want to become ossified into what it is, a picture, a blimp picture of something, and they encamp and they make it permanent. And they want to force us to stay in that phase for their profit. It shouldn't happen. It can only come through our individual choices and how we band together as a nodal structure against this fuzzy thing that is going on. So that's really my takeaway. It is possible, it is real, we can do it. And we have to be open, whatever position that we have, for trials and errors. We cannot be absolutely true. So what I'm saying also is that it was a year ago or 2 years ago, Susan, possible for two individuals that were absolutely sincere, one supporting vaccination, the other not, But what is essential is it has happened. What stock do we take of it? It's gone round and come back. Information now is that that vaccine is not a vaccine, actually. It is this and this and that. So how do we now, having gone through that trial and that error, knowing that it was an error, position ourselves? What angle of veering in this voyage of us? We are voyagers through universe. What angle do we take? And we have the twin tap, we can tweak it. That's what they say. We can stop it the way it is. For a new dawn, for a new world, for a new becoming. I'll stop there. Otherwise, gratefulness and greetings. Steve, how do you feel? What do you take away?
Thank you, Manu.
Well, we've made it the next, I mean, between design discipline in the 1960s and Grunch of the Giants, the 1980s, that was a 20-year thing. We've now gone 40 years past that, and we seem to be in the same place we were back when Bucky was looking at it, warning everybody that, hey, there's plenty. Stop being so selfish or so focused on the Grunch. And that maybe this is the time we'll actually pull it off. I'm hoping. I'll tell you, I'm when the whole thing collapses, it's going to be easy for everybody to stand up who can stand up. So I'm looking forward to standing up, and I'm really anxious to finish up this book and see where we are. I'm also very dedicated to the idea of creating a cityscape of the skylines of the great cities, you know, include London even maybe, and Singapore, what it was like in the 60s, and then what it's like in the 80s, so that Bucky can see that transition. That, to me, that's a very powerful image, that the Grunch of the Giants is shown in the buildings we built. Instead of feeding people, we build these buildings. So anyway, I'm excited to be here. Thank you guys for sharing. Next week will be our last weekend call until after the first of the year. So if we can make it, I'll be grateful, and thank you for joining us, and thanks for reading tonight. And I was hoping that you would do that. So
it reads very well. I mean, hey, Brian was great.
yeah.
Thank you. It was really fun.
And please, assignment.
Uh-huh.
Let not lose the momentum of Grunch of Giants during the pause that we're going to have.
Right, I agree.
Please, because otherwise we're going to forget the ideas and we fumble again when we start.
Yeah, no, I
So
think
let's just
that's
be individually. Everybody has a Steve sent around. Or Susan, was it Susan?
Susan sent the
It's in
PDF.
every invitation. Every invitation that goes out, I'm sending out the copy that Susan sent me.
Okay. So there's no excuse. There's no excuse not to
Finish it off. Cool.
All
Okay,
right.
everybody. See you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a
Bye.
good week, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Harry.